Okay, so ready to dive in.
Always.
Today we're tackling Fear, Trump in the White House
Oh.
by, of course, Bob Woodward.
Oh, this one's a doozy.
Yeah, I mean, he's known for, those deep dives into the inner workings of administrations.
Yeah, hundreds of hours of interviews, right?
Right, and this one really gives you that fly on the wall feeling, like
Yeah.
you're right there in the thick of it.
Absolutely. You really get a sense of the tension, the anxiety.
And like how they're all trying to manage Trump, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, picture this. Officials are so worried about some of his decisions. They're literally like sneaking papers off his desk.
Wow. To prevent like potentially catastrophic stuff.
Exactly.
That's wild. So where do we even begin with this one?
Well, let's start with how Woodward paints this picture of Trump's his management style.
Okay. Yeah, his style is something else.
It's not exactly like, by the book.
No, not at all. It's very impulsive, very much driven by gut feeling.
Exactly. Instinct over strategy almost.
Right, which, I mean, I guess sometimes that can be effective,
Yeah, maybe if you need to make a quick decision,
but in the long run, probably not so much.
right, and I think that comes through in the book, like with the whole NAFTA thing, remember?
Oh, yeah, with Gary Cohn.
Yeah, where he's like literally taking documents off Trump's desk to stop him from pulling out of NAFTA.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a pragmatic leadership style.
What does that even mean?
Well, basically, it means decisions are made based on what seems like the easiest or quickest solution at the time.
Ah, so not thinking about the bigger picture.
Exactly. Long-term consequences kind of out the window.
So basically, everyone around him was just constantly trying to like put out fires.
Pretty much, yeah. Always reacting, trying to manage the fallout.
I bet that got exhausting.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And on top of that, Woodward makes it clear there was this constant fear in the White House,
Fear of what?
like that Trump would do something, truly disastrous,
Right, right.
and that they'd be the ones left to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, I mean, you can see how that would create a lot of tension.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, how can a government even function like that,
Yeah, with everyone constantly second-guessing the leader,
working against each other?
undermining each other probably.
Right, and how do you get anything done when you're, like, that afraid of your own boss?
Exactly. It just seems like a recipe for disaster.
Which kind of leads us to the whole decision-making process, or lack thereof, I guess.
Oh, yeah, that was a whole other thing.
From what I gathered, it wasn't exactly a very structured approach.
No, not at all. It was, well, chaotic might be a good word for it.
Yeah, totally. Like, things were decided on a whim, without much thought.
And without much consideration for the consequences, it seems.
Right, which is, pretty much the opposite of how you're supposed to make decisions.
Yeah, there are these models, like the rational actor model, where you're supposed to weigh all the options, think about the outcomes.
Right, a very deliberate process.
But this was not that. It was very reactive, very instinctual.
And that led to some pretty major missteps, like the whole trade war with China.
Oh, yeah, the tariffs.
Woodward makes it clear there wasn't much of a, thought process behind that decision.
Which, I mean, really shook up the global economy.
Yeah, big consequences. And speaking of consequences, I think it's important to look at how this all played out during some of the key events that Woodward covers.
Okay, so we're talking the Russia investigation,
Charlottesville.
Trump's dealings with the FBI.
It seems like each one just kind of amplified the existing problems.
Yeah, piled on the tension.
Especially the Russia investigation. That seemed to really consume Trump.
Absolutely. Woodward portrays it as like an obsession for him.
He saw it as a personal attack. Right?
Yeah, and a threat to his legitimacy.
Which led to some rash decisions.
That's firing James Comey.
Right, the FBI director.
Which had huge political consequences. It really set off a chain reaction.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you wonder how much of what happened during his presidency was because of that one investigation.
It's a really interesting question.
And speaking of interesting, let's talk about Trump's approach to foreign policy.
Oh, boy, yeah.
Those phone calls with world leaders that Woodward describes, they're something else.
Pretty intense, to say the least.
Did his leadership style play into that, do you think?
I think it definitely shaped how he approached foreign relations.
How so?
Well, his style was very confrontational, very transactional.
And not exactly diplomatic.
Not in the traditional sense, no. He kind of threw out the rule book.
Which, I mean, some people might argue that was a good thing.
Yeah, you could say it shook things up, challenged the status quo.
But it definitely caused some tension with with allies.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't just go around yelling at world leaders and expect everything to be hunky-dory.
Right. But it is fascinating to see how different his approach was.
Definitely a break from the norm.
And amidst all this, you had people like John Kelly and Jim Mattis trying to, keep things from completely falling apart.
Oh, yeah, trying to hold it all together.
Woodward gives us a glimpse into their experiences, and it sounds rough.
Yeah, trying to work in that kind of environment under that kind of pressure,
It must have been incredibly stressful.
and probably pretty disheartening at times, too.
I mean, how do you even function when you're constantly afraid of making a mistake or, ending up on the wrong side of a tweet?
Right, and that brings us back to the book's title, Fear.
Yeah, it wasn't just like a tactic that Trump used. It was a defining characteristic of the whole administration.
Exactly, it permeated everything.
Woodward describes an environment where people were afraid to speak their minds,
Afraid to disagree.
afraid to challenge anything.
And that's incredibly damaging to any organization.
Because if you can't be honest with each other, how can you solve problems?
Right, and if you're always worried about the consequences of speaking up, then you're not going to be creative, you're not going to be innovative.
So basically, fear just kind of paralyzes everything.
Yeah, it stifles progress and creates this culture of, of just trying to survive.
So yeah, Woodward paints a pretty bleak picture, huh?
He does, but it's a picture that I think we need to see.
Right, because it shows us what can happen when things go wrong,
When leadership fails.
when fear takes over.
And it makes you think, could it happen again?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it?
It's a question that we all need to be thinking about.
Well, that's fear in a nutshell.
A sobering look at the inner workings of power.
And a reminder that, even at the highest levels, it's still human beings making these decisions.
With all their flaws and all their baggage.
And that those decisions have a real impact on all of us.
Absolutely. That's something we can't forget.
Thanks for diving in with me.
Anytime. Always fascinating.
Until next time.
See you then.